We are live.
We
Take
are
six.
Live. Take six, guys. Welcome back to the third episode of the Strong AF podcast. I'm your co-host, Nate Craig, and this is...
Asim Fayez.
And guys, if you have not seen our first episode, that's kind of the origin story of Nova Barbell Club, go check that out. And the second episode was actually with Asim and his wife, Layla. A lot of good content in there. Check out that episode as well. But we're going to have a quick one for you today, but very important topics here, guys. We're going to talk about rest, recovery, and injury. So, Asim, we have some questions from the viewers. The first of which is, how important is rest and recovery?
Rest is extremely important. And before I continue on, I want to kind of apologize to the viewers. We are filming live from our office in the gym during the gym hours. So you might hear some music, clanging and banging of the weights in the background. So if you do hear that, yeah, we're recording live in the gym.
This is actually live. People are putting in work here. But anyway, so yeah, rest and recovery, how important is that?
Oh, dude, I would argue it's the most important thing because honestly, if you're training super hard but you're not recovering, all you're doing is digging a ditch you're not really coming back out of. And if an easy way to conceptualize it is during the day you're training, you're breaking down the fibers, you're essentially deconstructing. Right, you're creating that hard stimulus, disrupting where your body is naturally. And then during the day, throughout the day, you're hopefully consuming the right amount of nutrients, aka you're giving the workers the tools, if you will, right? So during the workouts, you do the demo work. And then during the day, you then go buy all the materials and get the workers. And then when you sleep is when those workers actually go to work. They take those tools that you gave them, the materials you gave them, and that's where they start to do the rebuild and repair process. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the hormone balance. And I'm sure some of you have noticed that on days you sleep much longer, you'll wake up a lot lighter. And days you don't sleep as much, you're waking up a little bit heavier. And that has a lot to do with digestion, the hormone balance, but also how much you're sweating throughout the night. So if you're finding inconsistency in the scale in the morning, sleep plays a factor there. So from a recovery standpoint, I'd say it's extremely important. What constitutes as recovery, right? Like what helps in your recovery? Your sleep, your nutrition. Are you consuming enough? Protein is one that a lot of people really focus on. Protein's important. I also like to look at carbs. A lot of people are scared of the boogeyman, the carbohydrate. But I think it's extremely important, especially for performance-based goals.
Right.
You need that energy and you need that recovery. Protein's good for repairing. And then hydration. How hydrated are those muscles? Are they turning that beef jerky into a ribeye by rehydrating it? That is extremely important. So I think recovery overall is extremely important because it essentially creates your capital. It essentially is what constricts your budget for the week. If you were to look at it from like a monetary standpoint, I would say recovery dictates your budget of what you can spend during the week.
So if you're not getting, you could be putting in 2-hour workouts every single day, but if you're not getting the proper sleep and recovery, really, sounds like you're kind of just digging yourself a hole. Yeah,
you're going into debt. You're spending more during the week than your body is replenishing in its paycheck. And that paycheck is done through earned, right? And passive. So sleep and actually consuming. So if you're not giving yourself that paycheck and you're not in positive each week and you're going into a deficit, eventually that debt's going to catch up.
Right.
And you got to pay at some point. You can only go so long with that debt before that percentage accrues,
Yeah. Awesome. That's a good point. Let's just jump into the next one. Get those Z's, guys. That's pretty much long story short. What you said.
Long story short, sleep is king, nutrition and hydration, and then making sure you're scaling those workouts appropriately.
All right. Number 2, what should I do if I'm sore after a workout? Also, if somebody says they're sore after a workout, does that tell you something about maybe the way they worked out and prepared for that workout? Yeah.
So soreness? That's a fun one to talk about. So generally speaking, when someone says I'm really sore, the first couple of things that I think about is first, are they sore because it was a new change in workout routine? Was it a shock to their system where they're now doing movements and or volume they weren't previously adapted to? Because that can cause soreness. And always remember, soreness is not an indication of progress. Again, soreness is not an indication of progress. Don't chase being sore, because as your body adapts, you will then not be as sore.
I have that way in the past where it's like, if I wake up the next morning and I feel spry and ready to go, part of me's like, maybe I could have worked a little harder.
Exactly.
It sounds like that's not the case.
Don't chase the soreness, because sometimes you just end up digging a ditch you can't come back out of. So I'd say the reasons people would be sore are they either trained really hard. They had a night or two with very small amount of sleep, and then they finally gave themselves like a full night of sleep.
Yeah.
And then they wake up sore, like on that third day, getting that DOMS that we all have felt before, especially after a hard leg workout. The other reason is program shift. So they're training in one modal, and then it's a complete culture shock of stimulus. That could be a reason. Or they're just new to lifting. So it really comes down to which one are they. If it's you're new to lifting and the volume was appropriate, just work through it, train. Warm up a little bit longer, get some more blood flow, do some dynamic work at the beginning to get some blood flow to shuttle all that out of your system. So that way you feel a little bit more lubricated in that workout. It's kind of something, it's a necessary evil you kind of have to go through when you're starting out. When it's a program shift, assess and you've been training, was the program shift too intense? Was it too much? And then lastly, if it's something that you're seeing and it wasn't you're new to lifting or it wasn't a program shift, I would then focus on if what your nutrition is and what your hydration is and what your sleep is like. So essentially going back to the recovery question originally.
So if somebody's coming in day after day, it's not a routine switch up in regards to their workout or whatever, and they're still coming back day after day saying, I'm sore, and that's a common motif. Is that kind of an indicator to you, judging from what you said, they're lacking in some other department? Something's funky with their nutrition or their sleep?
Yeah, so if it's something that's a habitual thing, that's chronic, where they're just constantly sore, I would then first look at the workouts to make sure it was appropriate and they weren't just completely sending themselves into the deep end.
Right.
Because some people, especially around this time of year, get super gung-ho. Summer's coming, weather's getting warmer. You got to show a little bit more skin so people start training a little bit harder. I would definitely look at that, but then I would heavily dissect their nutrition, their hydration, their sleep. How much protein you're eating, what are your calories, and what's your calorie intake like, what's your hydration, and what's your sleep like. And one that I'm seeing a lot more recently is because summer's coming, people are trying to get cut. People doing too much of a deficit. And yes, there is such thing as too much deficit. So I'm seeing people do sometimes too much deficit, and which then means you're essentially giving the workers very minimal amount of tools to work with. That coupled with everyone here is super busy, so their sleep is not necessarily the best. But you come in here working out like Tarzan, but eating like Jane, it's gonna be pretty tough too.
That was a good one.
Say that, clip that. But I think that's gonna be that's the most common thing I'm seeing right now. I would say in the last couple of weeks is just people overshooting their deficit by way more, and not just recovering at all. Like they're digging a ditch they're not able to come out of, and they're hitting that debt point way too soon.
So for those people that did kind of use, hey, I'm sore, man, I killed it today, or I killed it yesterday, as their benchmark for a successful workout, what is now an indicator or something that they can look at, like, you know what, I killed that?
If that workout was better, if you're asking what is a good indicator if it's not soreness that they had a good workout?
Yeah, so now to kind of like rewire their brain. If
you guys watched episode 2, I'm going to reference something I said in there somewhere in the middle. Metrics. Come in with metrics. There's always a variable you can tweak to push progress forward. You always hear the word thrown around, progressive overload. But I think people get way too tunnel vision on progressive overload only being weight added to the bar. But if we all added 5 pounds to the bar every week, week after week, after 5 years, we'd be lifting elephants. So I think the way you should really truly look at progressive overload is the variables you can adjust are weight, reps, sets, rest period, exercises, and frequency. So you can adjust all of those. So say if your goal was last workout, you did 5 sets of 5 at 100 pounds. A good way to know that you did better today than you did last workout was you did it for 6 sets, you did it for 6 reps, or you did 105 pounds for those 5 reps.
Or even something like now I can pause it.
Yes, or you're technically better, like and that's the other nuance. And this is where it's good to have a training partner and/or a trainer plug that is able to give you that third person view of, technically that was better. Or record yourself. That's something that we promote heavily here. Not sit there and pose in the mirror, but record yourself and analyze your technique, so you eventually can become your own coach. So watch your technique. Did you do it better? That is also a metric that is viable as well. It's not as clean cut and easy, right? Because it's a little bit more subjective, but it is definitely a metric you can utilize to say, yeah, I did do better. Because it needs to be something that's definitive. Because otherwise, soreness, What if you're not as hydrated and you're under recovered, now you're sore? Now you're going to sit there thinking to yourself, yeah, I had a good workout. Or you just gash yourself because you did the Murph and you haven't done Murph all year round.
Right.
But now it's Memorial Day and you want to hit a mile-long run, do whatever the reps are, and then come back, hit another mile. The next day you can't walk. Yeah, of course you're sore. You did something completely different. But does that mean you got better from it? No.
True. Okay. I have some rewiring to do, I think. These are good questions. All right, next one is, how do I prevent injuries while working out? I think there's some obvious answers to that, and maybe some not so obvious as well.
I'm curious to see curious to think what you think the obvious answers are.
Preparation for the workout. Make sure you're stretching. Make sure you're foam rolling. Make sure your body is ready. You're warming up those muscles. Don't just go up to the squat rack and try to max out. Same thing with bench or really anything. Take the time to properly warm up.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yes.
Irreplaceable.
100%. I am consistently saying this. Some of the strongest lifters that we work with are the ones who are extremely religious and protective of their warm-ups. They are meticulous. It's methodical. They do it with intent. They don't just get through the appetizer to get to the meal. They enjoy the appetizer and they're very methodical. Think about everything they're doing because each one of those things you're doing should be something that builds into that lift. So your warm-up should prepare you for what you're doing that day. If I'm squatting, I'm not going to sit there and spend a lot of time warming up my shoulders unless I have a shoulder issue. But I want to do something in the warm-up that gets me ready for the workout. So I would say injury prevention starts when you walk in the gym. First and foremost, make sure you warm up and address any tightness. If you're working a desk job all day long and you just drove 2 hours to get to the gym, an hour to get to the gym, or you've been sitting all day, open those hips up. If you just came off a flight, maybe scale that workout back a little bit. If you just say you just flew into town, you want to go hit the gym, you're eager to work out, summer's coming, and you have a squat workout, either A, take a little bit longer to warm up to open up those hips because you've just been sitting for a while.
Right.
Or scale the workout back to the appropriate version of you that showed up today. And I think that's going to segue me into the next part. Scaling your workouts. One thing I'm seeing a lot in the training world, and I fucking hate this, is the use of RPE, rate of perceived exertion. The issue is most people's perceived exertion is all kinds of messed up. Generally, just to summarize it, it's a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being like your max effort and 7 being like, okay, I'm getting close to there. And it's something I used to use early in my training career. Then after a while, I realized people can't accurately judge RPE because most people haven't hit that wall enough to know where their walls are in that room.
I see.
Wall meaning their red line, right? Where their maxes actually are. What does it feel like to actually get close to failure or fail? So for me, I see people not regulating their intensity in training, especially in the main lifts or accessories. Training way too hard, way too often, and not allowing themselves to, once again, circle back, recover. And then that recovery, that debt eventually it's going to get paid back. And it's going to get paid back in either a long hiatus from training, a long mental burnout, or an injury. But it's going to, that bank account's going to get its money. And that is usually not the way we want it to accrue that money, So it's gonna get paid. We just don't want to pay it in an injury, and unfortunately, that's what ends up happening after a while. So I would say warm up properly, scale your intensity to the version of you that showed up that day, not what you want. Which is then comes back to the emotional attachment to the numbers you put in the program. If you say I'm going to come in, I'm going to hit 225 today or 315. But it's just not in the cards, and you can tell right away on those warm-ups, and that's truthfully, like you're just not like mentally bogged out, but you just know in your bones, that's probably not wise today.
Don't push it. It's not worth it.
You get no trophies for being a gym hero.
And also, no one cares.
Yeah, no one. Yeah, the longer you lift, the longer you do this, the more you realize that no one gives a shit. It's really just you that cares about it. You're gonna go brag to your friends about your PRs, and most people aren't gonna understand it. It's a very small group of people that actually understand it. So save yourself. Live to lift another day. Don't force it. So I'd say, yeah, for sure, it's the ego lifting. But essentially, I think we could just summarize that to ego lifting.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
also,
then
on that note, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, also make sure, guys, like if you're challenging yourself and you're putting up weight that's higher than normal for you, don't ask for a spotter.
Yeah.
Put those safeties up, because one little injury can put you out of the game for months, which can take away all the progress and hard work that you had put in for a while. And anybody that's been hurt in the gym before can attest to that and how bad it sucks.
And dude, that's such a good point. I think one thing that I've realized, and I was just thinking about like when I took a motorcycle driving class and things like that, we learn how to like bail and stay safe in bad situations. We drilled bad situations, how to get out of it.
That's kind of cool.
But no one really focuses when they first start lifting on how to actually bail out of a lift. Everyone focuses on how to do it successfully. Well, what happens when shit goes south?
Right.
Do you know how to actually get out of a squat? Are you going to dump it forward and knock yourself out? Or are you going to dump it backwards and save yourself? With a bench press, are you putting clips on there as a solo lifter, as the only person in the gym? That is a death sentence waiting to happen, especially as you get much stronger. So I'd say just learning how to keep yourself safe early on is just as important, if not more, than also how to do it successfully. Because if you don't learn how to do it right, you should also learn how to get out of it right.
Well said.
Yeah,
I need to brush up a little bit on that. So hold on. All right, let's jump into the next one. Should I work out when I'm sick or tired?
Oof. Okay, so let's break down to two sections. Let's go with the easy one first. Tired. Should you work out when you're tired? It depends. Stress is stress. Mental stress, physical stress, emotional stress. It's all taxed from the same bank account. So if you're having a very hard week, right now we're having a lot of layoffs and things like that. If you're dealing with a lot of external stress, and that is causing fatigue, then maybe go work out, but scale it back. But it's not going to be the end of the world if you skip the workout and move it to another day. Once again, I'm going to hit that quote again, live to lift another day. It is much better to come in when you're a little bit more mentally focused and fresh, because that means you're going to be able to focus on doing it right, rather than focusing on what's happening outside of here. Because if you're focusing on what's happening outside of here, you're not focusing on doing it right. And if you're not focusing on doing it right, A, you're probably not getting the most out of it, or B, you're probably going to get injured.
This actually ties it exactly into the injury prevention too. If you're tired, you know in your heart whether you're using it at a crutch, like, oh, I'm just a little tired, I had a hard day at work, versus, you know what, I still have it in me, I'm just a little pooped today. But yeah, don't be careful on those days you are tired and you do go into the gym. Make sure you're taking extra precautions, all the warm-up stuff we talked about, because that is one of those times when I feel like you're way more prone.
100%. And then also kind of assess, like, why is it that you're tired? If it's emotional, physical stress, those are all factors. Also look at your sleep. Are you tired because you just had a series of bad nights of sleep? That could be a factor too. Higher risk for injury. So once again, scale the workouts. I wouldn't skip the workouts in that situation, but I would definitely scale the workouts so at least you get the momentum going. Because the main thing is momentum, I find, rolls down the hill in any direction you put it. So if you get into the habit, well, this is specifically for me, I know. If I get into the habit of getting rest days, I give myself more rest days. So it's a cascade effect. And I think you and I are very similar in the sense that we build momentum in literally any direction we put it in. Sometimes good, sometimes not so great. But so I would say in a situation like that, if I'm tired, I'd rather just like do something, even if it's just stretch, foam roll, just do something on the floor, gym floor. So that way I am in that routine of just showing up. Because you don't have to come in and lift. There's always another day to lift. And if you do lift, you don't have to push those numbers. Scale it to the version of you that showed up that day, and you'll generally be safe. And then from the sickness,
I have personal feelings on this. Stay your ass home
Yes.
if you are sick. Don't be that guy and or girl that gets the whole gym sick and spread.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something contagious, stay home. Now, can you work out from home? Possibly. My rule of thumb, preface and disclaimer, we are not doctors. We're not trained professionals. We've just been doing this for a while, and I'll give you my unprofessional advice here. If the illness is above the collarbones, you can work out. If the illness is below the collarbone, raising that core temperature generally makes you take longer to recover, from what I've observed. So if it's like here and down, for sure, just chill out, dude. Rest, get some hydration, sleep more, watch some Netflix, go watch Avatar. I don't know, watch something.
Or solo leveling.
Or Castlevania. But if it's from here up, do something. Even if it's just push-ups, squats, something to get your blood circulating. Go take a hot shower. You probably feel really good afterwards. But yeah, because there's some illnesses, and once again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to go down a list of illnesses. But there's definitely some illnesses by raising your core temperature and exerting yourself. You're just prolonging how long it's going to take to get over it and how long you're going to be out of the gym.
Yep.
But blanket statement, I couldn't have said it better. If you're at all even think you're contagious, stay the fuck out of here.
Yeah, if you got the measles or the mumps and we see you in here, you're going to...
Yeah, and that mask ain't doing nothing. Don't put that mask on. Come in here, just stay home.
All right, we're running a little long here. We're trying to keep this one short. Just so much to talk about. And last one: how to deal with recovery while lifting and training. I think this is more geared towards competitive athletes. So, how do I deal with recovery while I'm maybe preparing for a competition and whatnot?
So we're definitely going to do another video kind of with a visual graphic showing the arc of training. But in training, when you enter into a training block and you say you're getting ready for competition, there's going to be a point in the middle what we call the valley of despair. Here is where you're accruing the most amount of volume, not necessarily intensity, but you're accruing the most amount of training volume period across the board. You're going to feel like you are drowning. Essentially, you're treading water, and you've been treading water for a couple of hours, and now the water's coming here, and you're fighting to keep your head above water. You're not drowning, and that is a key thing. If you get to a point where you're drowning, you've gone too far. So what we're trying to do is get you to that red line point and have you sit there for a period of time, build up as much fatigue as possible. So then that way, as you strip away that intensity and that volume, you're able to recover and do something called super compensation, essentially saying you, for a moment in time, will allow the moons to line up and be a much better version of yourself for a weekend. So whether it's strength, speed, or whatever it is, you're peaking and tapering for a specific event, whether it's a jiu-jitsu match, powerlifting meet, a distance race, triathlon, doesn't matter. The same rule applies. The duration of those training blocks and the duration of the valley of despair is sport specific, but regardless, you will have to go through that. So how do you handle that? During that period, it is extremely important that you are becoming a master, if not an expert, in your sleep hygiene, and we'll get into that in a second, your sleep hygiene, your nutrition, and your hydration. So what do I mean about sleep hygiene?
Clean pillowcase?
Yes, clean sheets, if you will. One sock, not two. But it's what you do before bed. What is your ritual before you go to bed? Just like you have a warm-up ritual you do before you go lift. You should have something systematic that you do before you go to bed. Don't look at the screen, right? Don't sit there, look at your phone, put it on your chest, and go to sleep. Do something, whether it's stretch, something to unwind your body and get it to come back down. So when you do sleep, you're getting restful sleep. Because just because you got the hours doesn't mean it was quality. Just because you're in the gym doesn't mean it was quality.
That's true.
So
Very true.
Quality over quantity. I would much rather take someone who sleeps 5 hours, but it's deep, restful sleep, than someone who sleeps 10 hours, but they're waking up every couple hours.
Right.
So sleep hygiene is extremely important to not only calm the mind down so you're not waking up through stress through the night, but you're also allowing your body to relax and go to bed. I don't know about you, but I've noticed lifting doesn't do this as much for me. If anything, it makes me more hungry. But I noticed like after jiu-jitsu, I'm revved up. It is impossible for me to go to sleep. So if anything, I try to train earlier in the day if I can. So that way, before I go to bed, I am a little bit more wound down. And if it is something where a situation where you, like in the past, when I was younger, I would train all the time and most of the classes were at night. I would have to sit there, headphones on, calming music, stretch, just to relax my body and get everything. Because I'm not big on the supplements. I know some people are, melatonin, things like that. I've never really been big on stuff like that. I always wake
up groggy whenever I take melatonin.
So that's
I'm just like, you know what? I'm just kind of like you said. I'm going to stay away from my phone for a little bit, read a couple pages, get bored.
Yeah, and that's literally it. Because like I feel like when you take the supplements, like sure it works, but like for you and I, we're going to bed late-ish because we have a lot of things that we got to accomplish, and then we're waking up early because we got to do this again the next day. We can't really afford to wake up groggy because now you're living with essentially a caffeine IV to your veins all day long.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like I think being able to have some kind of a system that works for you, where you unwind, go to bed, and can get restful sleep. So for me, it's always been making sure the house is cold enough. I always have a fan running, and stretching. I I don't know what it is, but the stretching relaxes me heavily. Static stretching, nothing that gets my heart rate up, calming. I'll put on like range earmuffs to kind of drown out sound. I live on our main road. I'll do that, and then make sure the house is cold, at least the bedroom, fan on, and I'm out. I don't get that much sleep, but at least I'm getting quality sleep.
The restful quality sleep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, guys, I think we hit on pretty much all of our questions today. Not sure how long we went for, but I think we did pretty good today.
For sure.
Awesome.
Definitely more concise.
Guys, for sure, comment down below. Let us know kind of how your sleep, if there's something that's helped you out with your sleep schedule or recovery or training, or if you have an injury story and kind of how you were able to work through that. We'd love to hear about it. So make sure to comment down below. Yeah.